In the year 1014, Byzantine Emperor Basil II defeated the Bulgarian army and captured 15,000 prisoners. He could have killed them, but he had a different idea. He wanted to weaken his opponents for decades to come. So he ordered that 99 out of every 100 prisoners be blinded. The 100th to be spared one eye to guide the rest back home, forcing their communities to care for them for the rest of their lives. Today, humans are subject to an attack just as cynical as this by a league of supervillains called NTDs. 1 in 7 humans on the planet suffers from one or more NTDs, more than the entire population of Europe. They do unimaginable damage. By crippling countless people, they destroy billions of dollars in income each year, weaken communities, and slow progress. What are these monsters straight out of a horror movie, seeking to wreak havoc on our species? NTDs are caused by a vast range of different parasites such as worms, amoeba, bacteria, or viruses. The symptoms they cause are just as diverse and truly the stuff of nightmares. Some, like hookworms, compete with children's brains and bodies for nutrition, stunting growth and impairing intelligence. Some NTDs cause blindness as a result of awful eye infections. Other parasites confine patients to bed for months and damage internal organs, often shortening lifespans drastically. Yet others cause horrible disfigurements that lead to social stigma, a life lived in shame and unemployment. There are also a few that are incredibly agonizing. They cause continuous itching or horrible pain. In fact, let's introduce you to one of them, dracunculiasis. If you accidentally drink water infected by it, you won't notice anything for a year, until one day you suddenly see a blister on your leg. The worm breaks out of the skin to release new larvae. The only way to remove it is to slowly put it out of your leg, centimeter by centimeter, over the course of several weeks, because dracunculiasis is now up to a meter long. We can all agree that we should kill such parasites with fire. That's why we declared war on them, pleading to eradicate most of them by 2020, and we tried doing that very hard. In 1985, there were 3.5 million cases of dracunculiasis all over the world. In 2015, there were 22. We killed 99.999% of these little monsters. It will be the first parasite we eradicate for good very soon. So even if they don't generate big headlines like Ebola did, actually, amazing things have happened when it comes to NTDs. All NTDs have one thing in common. They preferably attack humans who live in the most isolated communities and who are least able to defend themselves. There are villages that are 500 kilometers from the nearest health facility with no roads anywhere. So even if a remedy is available, what if it means going on an odyssey to get it to the patients? This called for an attack using brute force. To stamp out NTDs once and for all, what's possibly the biggest medical program in human history was launched, unmatched in scale. Organizations from all fields are working together right now to eliminate 10 of these NTDs forever. Ironically, every NTD is in fact preventable or treatable, but most of them can only be controlled by giving medicine to every person in all high-risk areas. That means millions and millions of doses of medicine, often for several NTDs at a time over the course of years, in countries where there is no infrastructure. Governments and health organizations just couldn't do that by themselves. Here, humanity got an opportunity to show off what the industrialized production of medicine can achieve. The pharma industry stepped in to distribute the necessary drugs for free and promised to keep doing it until those 10 diseases are gone. By 2020, nearly $18 billion worth of drugs will have been distributed, the largest drug donation the world has ever seen. They also help to make sure the drugs actually get to where they're needed. In 2015 alone, these treatments reached over 850 million people, more than the population of the EU and the US combined. Bad things happening generates headlines. Hundreds of millions of people overcoming extremely destructive diseases in an unprecedented act of cooperation doesn't. Stories like this one are not told often enough. Good things happen all the time. moving humanity closer to a future with no suffering. So, if you or one of your friends are in need of uplifting news, share this video with them. We, as a species, really can do great things with no other motivation than to help each other. It's good to remember that from time to time. A war has been raging for billions of years, killing trillions every single day, while we don't even notice. The war is fought by the single deadliest entity on our planet, the bacteriophage, or phage for short. Phage is a virus, not quite alive, not quite dead. Also, they look as if someone made them up. Their head is an icosahedron, a sort of dice with 20 faces and 30 edges. It contains the genetic material of the virus and often sits on a long tail that has leg-like fibers. There are more phages on Earth than every other organism combined, including bacteria. And they are probably everywhere living things exist. Billions are on your hands, in your intestines, and your eyelids right now. Which might make you nervous since phages are responsible for the majority of deaths on Earth. But you're lucky. While they do commit genocide for breakfast, they only kill bacteria. Up to 40% of all bacteria in the oceans are killed by them every single day. But phages also have major flaws. Like any other virus, phages need a host to survive and reproduce. They're not much more than genetic material in a hull, and they specialize. Usually, a phage has chosen one specific bacteria and maybe some of its very close relatives. These are its prey. Imagine a phage as like a cruise missile that only hunts and kills members of one very unlucky family. When a phage finds its victim, it connects its tail fibers with receptors and uses a sort of syringe to puncture the surface. In a weird motion, the phage squeezes its tail and injects its genetic information. Within minutes, the bacteria is taken over. It's now forced to manufacture all the parts of new phages. They only stop when the bacteria is filled up with brand new phages. In the final step, they produce endolysin, a powerful enzyme that punches a hole in the bacteria. The pressure is so high that the bacteria sort of vomits out all of its insides and dies. New phages are released and begin the cycle anew. In the last few years, bacteriophages have enjoyed the attention of the second deadliest beings on Earth, humans. Recently, we've started looking into injecting millions of them into our bodies because we're sort of getting desperate. We screwed up. In the past, a single cut or a sip from the wrong puddle could kill you. Bacteria were our phages, tiny monsters that hunted us mercilessly. But then, about 100 years ago, we found a solution in nature. By accident, we found fungi that produced a compound that killed bacteria, antibiotics. Suddenly, we had a powerful superweapon. Antibiotics were so effective that we stopped thinking of bacteria as monsters. Only the old and weakest among us were killed by them. We used antibiotics more and more for less and less serious causes. We lost respect for the monsters and the weapon. But bacteria are living things that evolve, and one by one, they started to become immune against our weapons. This continued until we had created what are called superbugs, bacteria immune to almost everything we have. This immunity is spreading across the world as we speak. By 2050, superbugs could kill more humans a year than cancer. The days when a cut or bladder infection or a cough could kill you or your loved ones are coming back. In the US alone, more than 23,000 people die from resistant bacteria each year. But it turns out that phages, our tiny killer virus robots, could save us. We can inject them into our bodies to help cure infections. Hold on, how can injecting millions of viruses into an infection be a good idea? Phages are very specialized killers of bacteria. So specialized, in fact, that humans are completely immune to them. We are too different. We encounter billions of phages every day, and we just politely ignore each other. Antibiotics are like carpet bombing, killing everything even the good bacteria in our intestines that we don't want to harm. Phages are like guided missiles that only attack what they're supposed to. Wait a minute, if we use phages to kill bacteria, won't bacteria develop ways of defending themselves? Well, it's more complex than that. Phages evolve too. There has been an arms race between them and bacteria for billions of years, and so far they're doing great. This makes phages smart weapons that are constantly getting better at killing. But even if bacteria were to become immune against our phage, we still might be able to win. It turns out that in order to become resistant to even just a few species of phages, bacteria have to give up their resistance to antibiotics. We might be able to trap them in a catch-22. This has already been successfully tested with a patient who had no other hope left. The bacteria Pseudomonas aeruginosa, one of the most feared bacteria, infected the man's chest cavity. They are naturally resistant to most antibiotics and can even survive in alcoholic hand gel. After years of suffering, a few thousand phages were directly inserted into his chest cavity together with antibiotics the bacteria were immune to. After a few weeks, the infections had completely disappeared. Unfortunately, this treatment is still experimental, and pharma companies are still reluctant to invest the necessary billions in a treatment that has no official approval yet. But things are finally changing. In 2016, the largest phage clinical trial to date began, and phages are getting more and more attention. And we better get used to it, because the era in which antibiotics have been our superweapon is drawing to a close. It might be a weird concept, but injecting the deadliest being on planet Earth directly into our bodies could save millions of lives.